So, drum and bass drums. A couple of years ago, I did a video called The Basics of Drum and Bass Drum Patterns or something along those lines. It was a video going over the basic drum and bass drum patterns, and today it's been one of the best watched videos on my channel. And on this video and on a lot of my social media, I get a ton of questions of people that ask me to do a deep dive, a deep breakdown, an advanced look basically on making drum and bass drums. So I figured maybe it would be good to start a series of videos where I'm gonna go and make drum and bass drums. There are gonna be 3 videos, and the first one will be going over drum and bass kick drums, the second one will be going over drum and bass snares, and the third one will go over some percussion, hi-hats, stuff like that. I can then also continue on doing this series in the future with further videos about maybe different style drums, maybe sampled drums, maybe, I don't know, just some other kind of drum sounds, and we can go over and add more videos to it as we go. So I think this would be a good thing to do. Today we're going to do the first video. This is going to be about making drum and bass kick drums from absolute scratch with synthesis. I'm not going to be using any samples. We're only going to be using a synth of choice. In my case, I'm going to be using Serum. Well, let's get started, I say. So I have a little blank Ableton project open right here. We've got nothing on it except for just some processing on the master, which most of this that you're seeing here is all not important. I can remove this. This is all just analyzing stuff we don't need. These are my little analyzers at the top here. We've got SonarWorks, we don't need that. And all of this, we don't need it either. This is a limiter. That's literally the only thing that's doing something to the sound. So this is just a limiter with these settings. It's not doing any boosting of the gain whatsoever. This is just there to capture any peaks that might go over 0 so that we don't hurt your ears. So before we get started, if you want to help support me, you can support me on Patreon, patreon.com/ARTFX. On there you can download a monthly sample pack every single month, and you can get early access to all my videos, get access to my Ableton skins, my Ableton presets, and everything else that's on there. I'm also going to be quickly pointing out you to my Discord community. If you want to join my Discord, you can check the link in the description below this video. There you can talk about music production, share your tracks, learn a whole bunch of stuff, or just come hang out and ask some questions if you have them. Or just, you know, come hang out and have a chat. So, drum and bass drums. I have a project file here at 172 beats per minute. And on here I've got 3 tracks, a kick drum track, a snare track, and a hats track. I'm not going to edit this down too much. I'm not going to cut out too much. I'm just going to show you the full process so that you really get an idea of how this works and how this all comes together. So we're going to focus on this first track today. On here I've got 2 MIDI clips with a MIDI note in here that is an 8 note long. So you can see this is a beat. We've got 4 beats total, so that's 1 bar, and then these are an 8 note in length. So these are just the same MIDI note that's in there. So let's get started with the first sound. Let's open up Serum. And the first thing we need to do is we need to have a sine wave. So I'm going to open up the wavetable editor by clicking this edit button here. There's an icon in the default Serum skin that is a little bit different, but just click that thing that's there. And you'll get this window. And we need to make this into a sine wave. Now we can draw a sine wave, we can remove all of the harmonics here to get a sine wave, but the easiest way to do this, right here at the bottom, you've got this enter formula box. At the right side of it, there's a little drop-down menu. Go to singles and choose sine wave. That way you get a pure sine wave right away. And the only thing I would do is make sure that the positive phase of the sine wave is in the first half, and then the next. That's just my own personal preference, by the way. You can leave it like this, doesn't really matter, but I like having it with the positive phase first and then the negative. So just take this phase bin right here from bin 1 and just drag it all the way down, and you get this. So going out of here, I'm gonna go and bring the random phase all the way down because I don't want this start position of the phase when I trigger a note to change. And I'm also going to bring the phase all the way down so that it starts right from here every single time. So now if I play this, in here, I have 2 notes of E0. So that means I'm just going to get 2 short bursts of sub bass at E0 in a drum and bass kick drum kind of pattern. So That's what we get. Let's turn this into a kick drum. I'm going to start with bring the volume all the way down, and let's set up a volume envelope. So I'm going to use the LFOs for this. I'm not going to use any envelopes here. We're only going to be using the LFOs, but we're going to set them to be envelopes. So LFO 1, set this to envelope mode, and I'm going to bring this up to be... Let's do an 8 note, so it's just the same length as this MIDI note. And I'm going to create a shape like this. So like that. A little bit of something like that. So we get a little part where it stays at the maximum level. And then I'm going to go put one right here, which is the halfway point of this LFO. Which means, since this is set to an 8 note, this point right here is a 16th note. So from here to here is a 16th note. And then from here all the way to here would be an 8 note. So I'm just going to make a shape, something like this. And let's drop this on the volume. So now we get this. And this means now that the bursts of sub bass have gotten shorter, because they were an 8 note long, and now they're a 16th note long. Now a 16th note is about the length of a kick drum that I usually would use for drum and bass. Drum and bass is a very quick style of music, right? You have a very high tempo. So the shorter the drums are, the more space you have for bass sounds and other sounds in between your main drum sounds. And because the tempo is so quick, you need all that space you can basically get to fill it up with other sounds. And if your drums are too long, you're eating up a lot of space in your mix of where you could put other sounds. So where you could put bass sounds, for instance. So an 8 note I think is too long, especially for a kick drum. Just from analyzing tracks, a 16th note seems to be about the sweet spot. There are tracks that go a little bit longer, there are tracks that go a little bit shorter, but I usually start with a 16th note. So right now we have this, and let's set up another LFO. LFO 2, we're gonna go and set this to envelope mode again. And same thing again. This time though, I'm gonna set this to be a 16th note. And I'm going, or yeah, let's just do, no, let's keep it at an 8 note. Let's just keep it the same as what this one is. Doesn't really matter too much, but I'm gonna create a similar shape. So I'm gonna drop a point right here, halfway, and then we're gonna do this, something like this. And then let's curve this one a little bit, and let's curve that one a little bit as well. In fact, I'm gonna bring it up to a 16th note, and let's do this. Something like that. This one, we're gonna go into the matrix, and we're gonna go and drop LFO 2 right here, and we're gonna go and select Oscillator A, coarse pitch. First things first that you'll see, we have a little arrow right here. This is the well, this turns the modulation from unipolar to bipolar. So right now it's set to bipolar, it's pointing in 2 directions, which means that the middle pitch right here corresponds to the middle line of the LFO right here, which is not what we want. We want this to be unipolar, so click this, so it points only to the right side. Now it's unipolar, which means that this end right here, this pitch where it ends, is going to be the default pitch that we put in with our note, so E0. So I can now bring this up while it's playing, and you'll hear that we get a kick drum. So let's just go to something like that. And that's already a pretty good starting point, actually. Now, I changed it to be a 16th note, just so we get a little bit more control here over the sound of the kick. So remember, we used this to set the length of a kick to be a 16th note. Why did I do it like this, and why didn't I just do this and change these to be bigger? Well, sometimes I might want to have a little bit longer than the 16th note on the kick, and then I can just do this. I can just drag this one slightly over the halfway point, and then we're just getting a little bit more tail on the kick, which extends that E0 note at the end, which could be really handy. But for now, for the start, I'm just going to do this. So we end basically right on that E0. So that's pretty good. Let's get started with adding a little bit of distortion here. We don't want too much. You don't want to go something like this. That's just it's just going to destroy the sound of the kick. We just want to have a little bit of something like that, maybe, just so it adds a little bit of extra harmonics, and it just gels everything a little bit together. Then we're going to click on mix right here, so that label underneath the mix knob, and that turns this into a level knob, and then we're going to bring this up. So it's nice and loud. Now, we can play around with the kick drum a little bit more, because right now it's good. But let's add a click to the start. So I'm gonna go and make another shape. This one is gonna be something like this, and I'm gonna turn this into an envelope, turn off the BPM syncing, and then bring this up all the way to 100 Hz. Let's go back into the matrix, drag LFO 3 to a new slot, go to here and choose Oscillator A coarse pitch again. Again, click this to be so that it's unipolar. And now we're basically going to stack this shape on top of this shape. So right here at the start, we're basically going to get another extra high boost right here. That is this shape. And because it's so quick, it'll only be for just a very short section of the start of this. There will be an extra sort of like an extra boost on the pitch. So let's just increase this a little bit, and right off the bat you should hear, or let me increase it while it's playing so you can actually hear it come in. Listen to the start of the kick, and it might be subtle because it's really quick, but I'll go in and change the speed as well. So let's listen. So you can hear, if we now take this out, this is without, and that's with. So you can hear how that really increases the sort of like the transient at the start. It's a little bit much right now. Let's back it down a bit. Let's go back in here. So there you go. But just by shaping these two, we now have created a pretty nice kick. I brought this back a little bit so that basically during this last section of the kick, right here when the volume is fading out, it's already at E0. So that's sort of like gonna give us that note that we need at the end of the kick. And what this will do, because this note is E0, and it will end exactly on that E0 now. So the oscillation of the kick drum is going to be oscillating at E0. And that will mean that we can make this oscillation of the kick flow perfectly into an oscillation of an E0 sub bass in our track. So right now I don't have that to demonstrate, but if these are going to be put into a track and the track is in the key of E, there's most likely going to be a sub bass note hitting E0 in that track. And every time it does, we can use these drums, and it will be really easy to align the drums with the sub bass of the track and make it perfectly flow into each other without any sort of like dips in volume and any of that kind. So we can really already design the drums with this in mind and make the drums exactly the way they need to be for us to make them, well, easier to mix later down the line. So that's just why I'm doing that, but it already sounds pretty decent. The kick drum isn't done though. I would say at this point we can maybe add some noise to it, so that click, we can reinforce this with some noise. So what I would do is take some noise here, and let's just take one of these noises right here. I'm just gonna take the ARP white, and these noises are all mono, which is quite helpful for a kick drum, because then the noise will not disappear when you sum the whole track to mono. The noise will still be there. It will be just as powerful in mono and stereo, which means the kick drum will always sound the same, regardless of how the track is played back. So let's just use that. Bring the volume all the way down of the noise, and we can use another LFO here. Make another shape, something like this. Turn it into an envelope, and turn off BPM sync. Make it pretty quick. Let's just do 100 Hertz. And assign that to the volume of the noise. And right away, we get an extra click. And now we can use the rate here to change how long that click is. So I'm gonna actually make this even shorter. And now if I play this and play with the rate of the LFO, you can hear how we get that extra noise coming in. So that's without. And that's with. Like it's pretty subtle, but it really makes a huge difference in the end, because this little click will help the kick to be more audible in a mixdown. It will just give it that extra little bit that it needs. So next up, we can still make the transient of the kick a little bit sharper if we bring the attack all the way down on the end envelope here. It should make the attack of the kick a little bit sharper, but honestly, I don't really like that sound. I often think it gets too transienty, too sharp, so I like the default value of sort of like half a millisecond. It gives the start of the kick just a tiny fade in, which softens the attack ever so slightly, but I feel it does sound a little bit more natural. So, well, I mean natural as opposed to how natural a digital kick can sound, I guess, because it's not a natural sound, but you get what I mean. Okay, so this would be pretty much done for the kick, I would say. How long was that video? Oh, that's actually a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be. But we can add some layers to this, because I think the kick drum in a track, often you want to accentuate a kick drum ever so slightly with something every now and then. You might not put that on every kick, but every now and then you might have one of the kick drums in the track that you might want to accentuate. For instance, the first kick of a section. So I'll show you a nice little trick, something that you can use. And this is actually very handy as well to make kick drums just ever so slightly more interesting. Let's make another MIDI track, and I'm gonna call this kick noise. And let's group these two and call this group kick in capital letters. So that's just gonna be our main kick group. And I'm just gonna take both of these clips right here, and I'm gonna put a serum on this track. So right off the bat, we should get the exact same thing as what we had before, right? We don't need an oscillator though, so we're gonna turn all the oscillators off. I'm only gonna use the noise oscillator. So I think it's nice to have some kind of a stereo layer in your kick drum, and you can do this in Serum. The noise files in Serum are all mono, so you would need some stereo noise to do this. If you don't have stereo noise, you can take one of these and just put like some hyperdimension on it, or some chorus, or some reverb, or something along those lines to make it a little bit more wider. Or you can just bounce one of the mono noise files, so just make a file of, let's say, bright white, and just bounce this to audio. Like, just bounce a longer file of that. So let's say just take like this. I'll show you how I did it, how I made the stereo noise files in Serum. So, like, let's say you have this. You just bounce that to audio. Flatten. So this is completely mono. if we look at it here, see, it's mono, there's no stereo width to this. If you want to make this stereo, it's actually very simple. Just duplicate it, so you have two of them. Pen one hard left, pen one hard right, and then just do this. Drop that one there, and do that. And now you have a stereo noise file. And because it's noise, we don't even have to fade this one. It's just gonna loop perfectly. It's noise. Like this start, yeah, I would maybe want to fade that and fix it, but this is how you make a stereo noise file. Just shift the left channel from the right channel ever so slightly. You can do it with a delay as well, for instance. Just take a delay and shift the left or the right channel, and that way the noise becomes stereo. And that would then just bounce that to audio and drop that back into Serum, and you've got yourself a stereo noise version of whatever noise you want to use. I already did this, so let me get rid of that. Let's just take these. I already did that, and in Serum, oh, by the way, one thing I should note out as well, we are doing kick drums here, right? So we're not going to be using any MPE features. I would advise you to turn the MPE off. In Ableton, by default, if I drag Serum in, it turns on MPE, and I want to turn it off, so that we don't get any of the MPE stuff, and it's not going to affect any of our sounds, because MPE tends to be a little bit buggy still in Ableton every now and then, so just to be sure, turn it off. So I already did that, like I said, and I have a whole folder here with stereo noise files that I can use. So if you want to get these and you don't want to make these all yourself, you can go to my Patreon. It's on my Patreon, so patreon.com/ARTFX. That's also where you can download a monthly sample pack. You can download all my presets, my Ableton skins, and get early access to my videos, ask me questions, and all of that stuff. So if you want to support the channel and want to support the videos and help me in doing this whole series, I guess, then check out my Patreon. Link is in the description below this video. So I'm gonna grab one of these stereo noises. Let's just grab stereo noise 1 for now, and we got this. So right at the bat you can see we have stereo noise. I'm gonna increase the phase a little, so now it's even nicer. See? Nice stereo noise there. And we're gonna use this and mix this in with the kick. So let's bring the volume all the way down, and let's create ourselves an envelope on an 8 note. Let's do an 8 note. And let's create a shape, something like this for now, and put that on the volume here. And let's play around with the shape a little. Let's turn on the filter. And I'm gonna route the noise through the filter. And I'm gonna choose to select a high pass 18 maybe. Bring the resonance all the way down. So we only get the high frequencies of the noise. And now, let's put a bit of saturation on the group here. So I'm gonna take the Ableton saturator. Ableton saturator is your good friend. If you're using Ableton, be sure to use the saturator because it's a really good device. And we're gonna turn on soft clip, and I'm gonna increase the gain a little. So we're already pretty loud, as you can see right here. And if I open up
Thousands of tears later.
Okay, so there we are. I got this thing authorized again. So, here we go. I have the kick drum now, and let's start increasing a little bit of the saturation here. So, I'm going to show you this. So, this is the kick by itself. And when I increase the saturation, you'll be able to see how much it does to the kick. So, let's just increase that. Let's do 4 decibels, seems about nice. And now I'm gonna go back into the kick drum and go to the amp envelope. I'm gonna shape this. That's how we can clean up that tail. So now on the noise layer, let me put a little bit of EQ on here. Just so we can see how much low end is in here. Let's turn on oversampling. Just roll up a little bit of that high end. Okay, so this noise is cool. We can do another variation of it. I'll just duplicate this track and call this noise LFO. And I'll show you another version of this that you can use. So another one that I think is a good one to do is just take the exact same patch. And then we want to control this right here. So this depth, we want to control that with another LFO. So take LFO2, and we're going to drag LFO2 right on this aux source. So now LFO2 is controlling the depth of this modulation. So if I turn the rate up to like 128 and set this to trigger, we get this. You get sort of like a rattly kind of noise. And it's a little bit hard to hear, but if you do this, like make a little section where it's at the loudest level, and then maybe bring this up a bit so it's not taking the noise out completely, and then do something like this so you get more like a shape like this. You can start to hear how that's affecting the noise. And we can also maybe do 1/64th. You get more like a flabby kind of noise sound. And then by going back in here, we can change how long this is as well. So, or how it comes up. You can, for instance, do something like this, where the noise comes in after the first transient of the kick. And we have the pitch here, for instance, by changing it up. We get brighter noise by changing it down. We get darker noise. And we can maybe also take another LFO here, set this to envelope mode, maybe do 1/8, and then apply this to the frequency here. And it's just going to sort of like change the noise ever so slightly. We can also do that on the pitch. So have the noise sort of like change a little bit over time, which is going to be very subtle, but these are pretty cool sort of like changes to do. An EQ could be nice. Take like a nice point, and you can create like a resonant peak in the noise. And then you can, for instance, use your LFO to automate that. And see how that sounds a lot more interesting than just a bit of noise like that. Because we've put some more effort into designing this noise, and that sounds pretty interesting. I would actually maybe now duplicate this one and make a variation on that to give ourselves the other noise layer. So this one, I think, is good for the first kick of like a section. So that one, like the first kick is nice, and then maybe the offbeat kick, you want to have a different variation on it that's a little bit lighter. So let's do this one. And I think what we could do is maybe just remove this one. So that is LFO 2 here. Just remove that. So you get that. And then we can something like that, maybe. Oh, that's kind of cool. Just bringing the pitch up ever so slightly on that one. So that's basically it. This is sort of like the main structure of doing this. I can quickly show or check how this would sound with a snare drum in the right pitch. Let's go and grab a snare drum. Do we have one in B? We do. Let's take a snare drum in the key of B and just drop that on here. That sounds pretty good to me. So there you go. That's basically how I would start making a kick drum. And now from this moment on, it's all about, you know, like little changes to just change how the kick sounds. Going back into the kick drum here. And I would leave this now. I would leave this and maybe start working on the snare, start working on the hats, and then probably start working on bass and adding some things to it to make a track. And then after that is added, like after you've come up with a nice little bass idea, I would go back into the kick drum patch here and start messing with the pitch envelope and maybe this and the length of these. Just go back and just mess with the patch and see if you can make it even better. Because when you've got your basses going as well, you can then sort of like alter and tweak the kick to sort of like complement the bass. And if you get the sweet spot right, it will all fall into place and you'll be like, oh wow, now the kick drum sounds big. And you'll actually find out if you tweak the kick and the snare to be sort of like complementing the bass lines in your track, you will also need less sidechaining. You will need less sort of like processing to make the things work in a mixdown, because they are designed to work together. And that's why I would never just start, well, sometimes I would, but most of the times I would not just print the drums to audio at this point. I would leave them in MIDI and just start working on the rest of the track. And then after that's done, then I might start thinking about, okay, let's tweak the kick a little and see if I can make it better. And then when you found like the nice sweet spot, then it's time to bounce everything to audio and work with the audio files going forward. So that's going to be it for this first video in this series. This is how to make drum and bass kick drums. Show really quickly how to do a little extra layer on top of it. I specifically chose to not do the top layer with a kick drum sample. A lot of people use kick drum samples as a top layer, which is a perfectly fine thing to do. But for this series, or at least these first 2 videos in the series, I don't want to use any samples. I just want to do everything with synthesis. So that's it for this first video. If you liked it and you want to help support, check out my Patreon, link is in the description below this video. And if you want to join my Discord server to have a little chat about music production, then come join the Discord, and link to that is in the description as well. That's going to be it. I'll be back soon with the next video in this series. going to be about snare drums. That's going to be it. See you soon. Peace.